Hello, and welcome to the Glossy Podcast. I'm senior fashion reporter Danny Parisi, and I'm today joined by Laura Kim. Laura is the co-creative director of both Monse, which she founded with her collaborator Fernando Garcia in 2015, and also of Oscar de la Renta, where she's also the creative director with Garcia. And you guys have both worked there since I think the early 2000s. Laura is extremely prolific. Not only is she designing and leading two fashion brands, she's also now getting into home design as well. So I'm going to ask her about that and all of her different interests and how she manages it all. Laura, thank you so much for being here. It's great to meet you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So I mentioned in my intro, you're a very busy woman. You have a lot of stuff going on, and your latest interest is home design. You're working with Crate & Barrel. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing with them, and then we can get into all the design questions and everything else.
So with Crate & Barrel, we started talking about doing tabletops and entertainment things. But then I said, if we're doing tabletops, why don't we do a dining table? So we have a dining table, chairs, and tools to cook and also to store things and to serve on beautiful plates and glasswares, all of that, napkins, candles.
So it just spiraled out of that and kind of grew over time. Is that something you've been wanting to do for a while?
Yes, but I actually never thought I could get it together on my own. And that's why when I started talking to Crate & Barrel, I just thought it was such a perfect collab. And I love that I've always shopped their product already, so it was very natural for me to work with them. Their store in New York at the time was right below Monse office, and they just moved to a new beautiful space, so we're not right above them anymore. But every day after work, on my way home, if I'm hosting that night, there's always a missing glass, or there's more guests than I only have 8 sets of something, but then there's 12 people coming. So I'm always at Crate picking up stuff. So when they reached out, I was really excited.
Yeah, and it does feel like a natural extension. I think fashion and home design have a lot of overlap. They're both about expression, creativity. How did you approach designing it? Did you feel like it was very similar to how you design clothes?
Designing clothes, cooking, and what I did for Crate & Barrel, designing home goods, it's all very similar. You have an idea and you always think about the atmosphere at the end, how it's going to come together. So you kind of conduct it, and you buy raw materials, you collect images, you have a team that could help you execute it, and then it's we did a photo shoot when everything was finished. And for fashion, it's a runway or a photo shoot. So it's very similar. Content creating at the end.
And what kind of references were you pulling in for inspiration?
I've been collecting so many images over the year of what I want for home. So I kind of edit it down, and I actually edit it down to more summer oriented. I personally love summer clothes, summer everything. I love the weather. I don't care if it's too hot or sweaty. Summer is my thing. So it was a summer themed. And one thing I really love about summer is gardening. And I'm pretty new at gardening because, I lived in New York City for almost 24 years. So you don't get to have a garden, but I grew up with helping my parents garden. But luckily last 3 years, I had a very cute garden in Soho on my roof, and the Crate & Barrel collection is very much inspired by my garden. And so is Oscar collection with flowers and stuff.
For those of you listening, Laura has a big flower on her sweater right now. But yeah, it's interesting. It does feel like there's a lot of overlap in terms of the process. You bring in your inspiration, you collect reference, you put it all together, and then you've got a collection at the end. Was there ever any thought of, so you said this was something you wanted to do on your own and you weren't sure if you could get it together. Any thought of doing a Monse home, collection in the future, or for Oscar?
Oscar used to have home, and it was so cute. I still have a lot of the pieces, but I think it takes a lot of, I think we had like a small team. I think we needed a bigger team, and we're not doing it anymore. I hope we start again. We always talk about it because there's so many like cute elements in our collection that could turn into home stuff. So I'm waiting for them to bring it back.
Yeah, I guess that is one of the differences, I guess, is that the manufacturing and the actual like product is, requires different skill. There's no woodworking, for example, involved in a lot of fashion. Yeah. So do you think for now it seems like the smartest move is to work with somebody like Crate and Barrel who already has the expertise, and then you can kind of bring your design elements into it?
But if Oscar decides to do it again and put a team together, I'll love to do it for Oscar too. For Monse, I have to put the team together, and I don't know if I can.
Yeah, I guess that's the difference between the two. Monse, it's like if you want something to happen, it's got to be from you. So tell me about those two brands. So obviously, you and Fernando are leading two fairly successful fashion brands, and they each have their own unique identity. Like one is older and you not founded by you, and one is newer and is founded by you. What's kind of, how do you separate them in your mind? Like what do you think is like the different identities for those two brands?
I think like it's not just me. All the girls, they have days when they want to look like Oscar women, and they have days when they don't want to look like Oscar women. And I think that really helps me. Like, I love wearing Oscar to evening, like there's a cocktail or gala, or to work or luncheons. But there's days I live in downtown. I'm a downtown girl who would wear like a cut-off jacket with a tank top and like mini skirts. So it kind of like, and I try to make my work very relatable to my own life, because I think as a woman, if you don't like or relate to the items of clothing you design, then who would want that, Like, I want to make sure it works for me.
Yeah, and as a consumer and as a person who is, a fashion, customer, you're not wearing one brand every single day. You're not, you've got different aspects of your personality, and I guess that makes sense. When you have an idea, do you immediately know this is an Oscar idea or this is a Monse idea, or just sometimes you kind of have to work at it?
Like 99% of the time, I know where it's going. But then there's moments where I'm like, can I push this at this brand and see what happens? Like, there was a show of Oscar show with like big petticoats. And for rehearsal, all the models were not wearing the gown, but they had their hoodies or whatever they came in. They just had the petticoats to make sure they know how to walk in it. And that inspired my Monse show a couple springs ago, which was just the petticoats and sports bra. So you never know where the inspirations will come from.
Yeah. And I guess over time, the brands can kind of shift to something that maybe would not have worked for Oscar 10 years ago, maybe could make sense now. Yeah, I guess. So starting with Oscar, you've been there a couple of years now. How do you feel like the brand, I mean, by a couple, I mean like 20. But how do you feel like the brand has changed over that time?
Oscar himself, I think his success came from being able to change with time, because this company is about 60 years old, and it was able to adapt to changing women, changing world, the way we dress. And I think last 20 years, because I've been here for 20 years now, we did definitely change. Our categories got wider. We have more casual clothes than before. So we're adapting to our clients of what they need in their life.
Yeah. And then Monse comparatively is only about 10 years old, I think, or maybe a little less.
Yes. We're 8 years old.
8 years, yes. So, and your first show, I think 2016, 2017, around then for Monse?
Yeah, I actually can't remember. Maybe 15, I don't know.
Yeah, somewhere around there. But so that's comparatively, it's a shorter run so far. But do you feel like there's been a similar evolution for Monse in terms of how you think about the brand over time?
We started because I've been at Oscar about 12, 13 years when we started Monse. So I was a little scared to go too young. So we started targeting like 45 plus. But then we widened the range a lot during COVID. So we definitely changed. But I also think this year's plan is to actually put focus back on our initial clients.
Which is what age group?
45 and plus.
Okay. That's interesting. I was wondering kind of about the age demographic between the two. Do you find, I don't know if you have this data, but do you find that people shop both brands? There are people who are buying Oscar, then also going over and buying Monse, or is it kind of two different customers?
Monse, like big percentage of our customers are older than I imagined. They're 65 and plus. Because we're still a luxury brand, so the price point's quite high. So I think the demographic that has the money power to buy our goods over and over again, they're not like 30-year-olds. Yeah. I still can afford it if I can pay for it.
So what's it like then working with Fernando? Obviously, you guys have been collaborating for many years at this point. It seems like, you're two creative directors and you've got two brands. Do you feel like one of you gravitates more toward one or the other? Or is it pretty even split in terms of, Monse is 50%, you 50% Fernando?
So I think Fernando, naturally, he's more of an Oscar person. And I think I'm more naturally Monse girl. But we do it together, and there's still days he shocks me of what he can deliver. I'm like, oh, wow. Like,
in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. Both ways, I guess. There's days I'm like, wow, Fernando, I can't believe you did this.
Yeah. So what's the process like? Do you guys, you come to each other with sketches and ideas and just, hash it out together?
So we talk to each other all day in person or over the phone or through, DM or we're literally talking to each other all day. And I don't think we sit down and have work meeting. It's just in our conversation. And I know what he's doing. He knows what I'm doing. He's much more into PR and marketing than I am. So he's working on those all the time, image creating, but both designing clothes together. And I personally like starting the collection because I like to be organized. I panic. I hate doing last minute things, but he hates planning. So he jumps in towards the end and hustles through because when you jump in at the end, it's much harder.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I was going to ask actually about that sort of division of duties. So he's a little bit more gravitates toward marketing. Is there an area of kind of business that you feel like is more your main wheelhouse?
Well, I need to make sure we're making money so we can pay for the development and pay everyone's salary. And so I make sure our collection is sellable, that we're going to meet the plan, and I make sure what we're buying is within the budget. And if it's not, I just have to balance it out somewhere else or tell my CEO or something. And I have to make sure my team is well staffed, happy, and they're going to produce amazing things. Because if you don't have your staff and if they're not happy, nothing is going to happen. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I guess another thing I want to ask you, so you've got two brands. You're also working in a collaborative relationship, and you're doing, collaborations with Crate and Barrel, and you're also into gardening. I feel like you have a lot going on. So I feel like I have noticed creative directors across fashion tend to have a lot of interests and a lot of different things going on at any one given time. I feel like Virgil Abloh was kind of the blueprint of this, he was doing 10 million different things at once, working with different brands. Do you feel like that's more of an expectation around the role of creative director now? Is that you'll be doing stuff outside of the brand and maybe kind of evangelizing or being like an ambassador for the brand in your work with other companies or other people?
I think it depends on the person, and I also think the world is letting us do that. It's changing a lot, like because I don't think it would have been possible 15 years ago to have like a fashion job and then like interior design job, and that's like it's become very flexible. I think the work environment, and I think it's easier to communicate with people. But I don't think it's about like having different categories or like saying you are going into home or beauty. Like I think it's more about me as a company, as Laura. I'm sharing culturally what I like as a designer. Yeah. And I would love to get into art too, but
maybe someday.
Fernando's actually a really good artist. I'm pushing him to paint, and I can like curate a gallery show for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would be great. And that feels another category that I feel like does have a lot of overlap with fashion. It's interesting. I think fashion is such a cool industry because creative people are in charge for one thing. And also, I feel like, especially in luxury fashion, you are encouraged to try different things. If you want to paint, if you wanted to release a collection of paintings or something through Oscar, like you could do that. Fashion brands do that all the time. So it does feel like you said it's getting more flexible, more open to creative directors trying different things. Is there any other things you would like to do officially through Oscar or Monse that you haven't tried yet? Could be anything.
Oh wow, skincare. But I might do that under Laura Kim line.
Yeah, you could. I mean, that's another one with a lot of overlap there too. What's your feeling on like, you want to do all these things, but you don't want to spread yourself too thin? I mean, I don't know. What's your approach to that?
Building a good team is one of my, like, I actually really enjoy doing it, like meeting the right people and putting them in the right position and making sure they settle in. So, if I have right people at the right job, I don't need to be doing it all the time. So that's my goal. Like Oscar team is like solid. So I'm so blessed. But whenever someone quits, I'm like, oh my God, I have to either fill in for a little bit or find the right person right away.
And also finding the right people is a whole job in itself. Sometimes interviewing and making sure the vibe is right and everything. Are there certain things you look for? Like, are you really looking for experience, or is it more about personality when you're looking for people? So
I actually can work with like anyone. It's like something that I have that. A friend of mine told me I'm really good at delegating because maybe I told her to help me too much. She's like, gosh, you're so good at delegating.
Yeah, maybe passive aggressive, that comment.
I know, right?
You're so good at telling me what to do.
Yeah. But I love hiring people based on, like when I meet them, I know it's going to work or not. And it's something Oscar told me. It's like, if you don't want to have lunch with this person, don't hire that person.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good metric. And it also, I think, makes sense that you've had this long, fruitful relationship with Fernando because it sounds like you're someone who works well with people. And not all creative directors are like that. So I think that's a valuable skill.
But like, I'm really open to help. I think that's like one of my things that helped me become a good leader. I think I'm a good leader. But I like hiring people who can do things I'm not good at. And I think that really helped me build a strong team because there's things I just can't do. And they're there to help me and they can do it better than I can. And I think that makes me much stronger as a creative director.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's true. Another thing I wanted to ask, speaking of kind of the role of creative director, do you feel like there's pressure on you as a creative director to be really active on social media, to have sort of a personality or be the face of the brand in some way? Is that something that you think it's important for creative directors to do?
So at Oscar, they don't really push me to do that at all. And at Monse, my CEO kept showing me other brands where the creative director is like talking about their piece every day, like taking photos and this and that. But, social media for me, I want that to be for me. It's how I want to be represented in the world. And Monse has their own social media. Oscar has their own social media, and they have way more followers than I do. So they're definitely doing well.
Yeah.
Sometimes I actually don't want to share too much of what I'm doing at Monse or Oscar because it will be before the brands actually share that information. So I want people to go to their Instagram instead of mine.
Yeah. And it also kind of, I think, preserves some surprise, some excitement to not see every step of something as it's being made. You just see the finished product. But that's good that you don't feel pressured. But you do kind of like, I guess, intentionally or not, you kind of create a brand for yourself in addition to the brands you're working with. And it feels like in fashion, because creative directors tend to move around a little bit, that there's a little bit of separation between the brand and the person who's currently at that brand. And then you get like an era of a brand. The Hedi Slimane version of Celine is different from the Phoebe Philo version of Celine. So it's kind of like, I don't know, they feel a little bit more separated maybe than some other industries where this executive is like associated with this company or something for a long time.
Because I did quit Oscar after 13 years to start Monse. I started Monse right after Oscar passed. And during that time, I realized like I felt like I'm nothing after I left Oscar. I'm like, who am I? Like I had this like thought like, wow, I spent like 13 years of my life right after college at this company. And this is the only thing I know about. Like I didn't know who I was anymore. So that really made me think like, okay, there's a job and it could be your own company, but like you do have to be yourself. Like there needs to be, like Laura as a person outside of these two brands.
Yeah. So do you think that having Monse helped you kind of stay at Oscar for a long time without having that feeling of losing yourself in the larger world of Oscar, I guess?
I also think even Monse, I treat it like how I'm treating Oscar. No, I think actually just having my own voice in social media helped me like not get too attached to that work life. Because there is a life after working hours. And if I ever like step away from Monse or Oscar, like I won't feel like I'm lost.
Right. Yeah. So remind me, is there a official relationship between the two brands other than just you being in charge of both? Or like, are they kind of two separate entities from a business standpoint?
Yeah, it's completely separate. But Oscar does do all of our shipping because we have Oscar has a huge warehouse. And they do it for free, which is very nice.
That is nice. That's very generous of them.
And they help out whenever I need help. Like, It's not often, but like here and there, I'm like, oh, can you guys help me with this? And my CEO is very flexible and he helps me out anytime we need help.
Now we'll take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. And you guys have done joint shows between the two brands, or having an Oscar show and a Monse show like happening kind of in the same venue, right?
We did that on the first show. When we came back to Oscar for that was 7 years ago. Yeah, we did a show together.
Speaking of shows, so you guys for Oscar, you did a show at New York Fashion Week this season, right? Or was that last?
No, we stopped doing shows since COVID.
Oh, okay. At New York Fashion Week or any runway shows at all?
So we are actually planning to do a runway show in June at New York Botanical Garden. But our CEO is trying to avoid New York Fashion Week.
Got it. But do you feel like have you missed the runway, or do you feel like that's still an important thing to do for the brand in the future?
So since we stopped doing runway shows, our business has been so much stronger, which is so my CEO is kind of like, why do I want to spend it is so expensive to do a show. And Oscar is a brand that it's kind of like my CEO said, I don't want sponsors at the show. Like our brand shouldn't be that because we're targeting our target customers won't understand that. So it's kind of hard for us to go back to the show knowing the formula we have now is working for us really well. And when you don't do a show, like the design team focuses more on making sure every garment is commercial and sellable. Whereas when you do a show, like you do make a bunch of stuff just for like a show. I mean, in my head, it's really important, but at the end of the day, it might not be.
Yeah. No, it's a big cultural part of the industry, but I've heard a similar sentiment from a lot of brands where it's like, if you really break down how much you spend on it versus how much it drives in terms of business, it is maybe not really worth it. So I think your CEO might maybe have a good point, even though might be a little disappointing.
I know, like I do miss doing shows, but like I do like my nice bonus end of the year too.
Yeah, which you might not get if you were spending tens of thousands or more on a show. Yeah, it does feel like, I mean, I don't know how much you're involved in like the spend or the budgets for stuff like that, but do you feel like there are other things that are a better investment in terms of marketing that you find that maybe have a bigger impact than a show would have?
I mean, I think what we did at Oscar, instead of advertising or doing a runway show, we are putting a lot of more effort on dressing celebrities for red carpet, like Met Gala, music videos. And I think that actually really, it's working for us. And we're getting a lot more custom design, like VIP clients. So we do a lot of like couture pieces. And I think those clients are looking at red carpet and seeing like, okay, like I want that quality of dressing, and they call us for it. So that's definitely working for us.
Yeah. And as a fashion customer, do you find yourself looking at red carpet looks and getting inspired and wanting to seek out those brands when you see them?
So I'm kind of anti-red carpet. Like it just doesn't interest me because I don't really watch movie or listen to music. It's like, but Fernando loves it. So I'm like, okay, you love it. You're good at it. So he's the one who's taking charge of it.
Yeah. But that does seem like a smart, because instead of making an entire runway full of stuff that maybe you're not going to sell, maybe you make one piece that someone is paying for, and then it still kind of serves that like big publicity kind of purpose. And did you dress anyone at this year's Met Gala?
We dressed Kylie Jenner, Kris Jenner, Pamela Anderson, Kerry Washington, Lauren Sanchez. I'm probably forgetting someone.
That's quite a lineup though.
Yeah. So luckily, like if I were to do this, I don't think I could get anybody, but Fernando's really good at it.
See, well, and that's another benefit of this like joint partnership is like, if he's into that and that's something that he's naturally drawn to, you can just let him handle that part of it.
And we had like pre-Met party where like Lauren Sanchez came with Jeff Bezos, Pamela was the host. Like we had a great PR week.
Yeah. Yeah, that does feel like a valuable use of like your time and resources and the team's effort compared to maybe a big expensive show that doesn't have that same kind of pull. Yeah, what about so from the design perspective, are there other kind of trends or styles or things you're interested in making more of in the future? Like obviously you're doing some couture stuff, and you mentioned your garden is a big inspiration, but I don't know, any other things you want to explore in your clothes?
I wear so much workout outfits not as leisure because like I actually love workout outfits. So I have tried making gym clothes with Monse, but I didn't have right manufacturer. So the design was really cute, but I don't think it was like very functional. So that's something I really want to learn and expand on.
Yeah. And it does feel like activewear is really popular, but also very crowded. I feel like there's a lot of brands making it, and then you're also going up against like Lululemon or Nike or like people who have like decades of experience.
I know.
Yeah. So I can see that being really tough. But yeah, so you would be interested in a Monse active in the future, maybe?
Yeah, no, I'm actually like yeah, no, I need to put some time into it to find the right manufacturer, but that will be my first one. And I do want to get into learn about mass market because Crate and Barrel for me was more mass market. The audience was more mass market than Oscar. Like there's so many more people buying Crate and Barrel compared to how many people are buying Oscar. And I do want to get into that, like for clothing too. Like I do think it's important that what I create is accessible to everyone. So, I mean, that's like a complete different business model and maybe I'm too old to get into it, but
Well, you mentioned earlier that one of your duties is to kind of like make sure the collections you make are sellable. So when you're designing something with Fernando or you guys are talking out ideas, what kind of things are you thinking about to make sure that this is actually going to sell and is not just a conceptual kind of thing?
I mean, I constantly tell Fernando, oh my God, who's gonna wear that? Okay, my Fernando, my boobs are gonna fall out in that dress. Like, so, but he listens.
Yeah. So are you looking at like data or do you pay much attention to, I don't know, stuff like that? Or you kind of try to go more by your instinct and what you think looks good?
So we do have ton of data, on what's selling, what's booking, who's buying and all of that. But I also think it's important for designers to look at the future because that's something data can't tell you. So it's half database and half like how I think will be by the time we ship the clothes we're designing.
Yeah. I often feel like data can help you follow a trend, but it can't necessarily help you set a trend. And I think, the best fashion and the best designers is about setting trends and doing things that not everyone else is already doing. I guess you and Fernando feel that pretty strongly, though.
Yes, and we talk about it like every day. And I try on almost every single thing that we produce. So like I can also give our team feedback based on what we have done already and be like, let's change it, do it better. Or there was actually a case where Ozempic first came out. I told my sales team, I'm like, we should order smaller sizes for next season. And they didn't really listen. And when the collection hit the store, they realized the smaller sizes are flying out faster than before.
Oh, that's a really interesting point. I didn't even think about how Ozempic is affecting like size orders for fashion brands.
Because, we're ordering like 4 months in advance.
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, I think you got to pay attention to that kind of stuff, I guess. Last couple of things I want to ask you, Laura, sort of more broader questions. But first is just for people in your position, creative directors and fashion in general, what do you think is the biggest kind of challenge that you're facing right now, for the whole industry?
The market is really not stable. I mean, you read everywhere, everyone's down like on percentage of their revenue. The stores are struggling. The department store model is not where it used to be. And I also think there's whole talk about like TikTok going away. Not that TikTok will affect luxury market, but things are shifting. And I think it's important that the creators are reading the trend and how things are getting done and adapt. You have to be flexible and be adapting to the new way of working. And this whole, I think everyone is trying to cut out all the middle people, and the existing model has a lot of middle people involved. But I think we have to change and we have to break down a lot of barriers, I think, and survive. So I'm trying to understand what's going on. So I'm like, so I can survive.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I've thought a lot about sort of where fashion can and should be selling. Obviously, Farfetch had a really bad situation at the end of last year. A lot of the department stores, I think, have changed a lot. I don't know. Do you have any feelings on is it still important to be in like a Saks Fifth Avenue or Bergdorf Goodman, places like that? Or is kind of direct to consumer maybe more attractive?
I mean, I was at Bergdorf 2 weeks ago and I haven't been there in a while because I'm not a big go to store person, but I thought it looked so good. I was like, wow. I felt like a little girl in the candy shop. So there's definitely elements of that where how people curate it for you to like and shop. So I do still believe in it, but there's whole other conversation about it's about creators, it's about marketplace. So you're just cutting out everything, and it's just like every individual can have a voice on what they want to create and sell, which I also think is very interesting. And yeah, and I think it frees up your mind to do stuff. So I'm trying everything to see where I'm gonna fall into. But, it's fun to experience and change. And I think that's also part of a creative process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also remember, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Oscar selling on Amazon luxury stores? Are you guys selling through?
Yeah, we were first
one
brand,
of the first brands.
luxury brand. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you say anything about how that's been going? Or like, was that, I don't know, you've been on there for a couple of years. Was that helpful? Was that a good channel for you guys?
It wasn't like the best store. It wasn't like our number one selling store, but it's definitely a marketing tool. Like you're being exposed to more people. And I think one of our second collection we dropped, they video streamed our show, our content, because we made like a short movie. It was during COVID, and like that's just reaching to so many viewers.
Yeah, and it kind of takes the same role as Bergdorf Goodman, where your product is there, it's displayed beautifully. It's a great tool to introduce people to the brand maybe for the first time, rather than requiring them to like come to seek you out. It's just there where they already are.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Like you might show it on Amazon, and the people won't buy it right away, but it's like leaving a footprint almost. So repeatedly, they're gonna be like, okay, like one day they'll click.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've heard this thing about, they need to see the brand 5 or 6 times or something in different places before people will finally, click on it or go into the store, whatever it is. Yeah. How do you feel about kind of physical stores in general, I guess, versus online? Is retail still a big part of the Oscar business?
Yeah, for Oscar, it's really big, really important. And I was kind of like an anti-store person. Like, I think I was just being a brat, being like, oh, everything should be e-com. But honestly, maybe because I'm getting older, I'm going into stores recently.
I definitely think retail is making a big comeback, especially after e-commerce had that huge boom in like 2021, 2022. And maybe it's just people are like kind of have been pent up and like really wanted to go back into a store. But it feels like there's a lot of interest in that, even though I know opening your own stores is really risky and expensive and all that kind of stuff. What about Monse? Do you guys do a lot of retail business for Monse?
We don't have a store, and I actually really want to open a store, and I want it to be more of like lifestyle. So you walk in and you'll get to buy Laura's favorite skincare or like, and this was just my dream. I told my sister's a fashion retail interior designer. So I tell her like everything I want. I'm like, why don't we have like a farm stand on Saturdays? Like, why can't we do like dinner parties at night? So I do want a store soon, but I want it to be more than just a clothing boutique. I want it to be a place where people gather, have a drink, or have like newest matcha. And my sister has a farm upstate. Like, I'm like, why can't we bring your vegetables that you can't eat it all? Every Saturday.
I mean, I think that sounds like a great idea. If you ever do open a Monse store, you got to let me know because I would love that. I think that's all the time we have. But Laura, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining the Glossy Podcast. It was great talking with you.
Thank you.
And for those of you listening, don't forget to give us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to this, because that helps us out so much. And don't forget to subscribe to the Glossy Podcast, because you'll hear interviews with industry insiders like Laura every Wednesday and week in review episodes with me every Friday. But until then, thank you for listening. And Laura, thank you again for being here.
Talk to you soon.